Hey everyone, it's Tim from Linessa Farms, Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today. So we're taking a little break from the interviews. We've been doing lots of interviews lately, and we're going to pick back up next week. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up. We are going to be going to Squibb Ranch here pretty soon. We are going to be going to see Rick Adams. Rick raises sheep over in Illinois. And we will be going to his farm to talk with him. We'll be talking to Jeff Hunter of Hunter Nutrition about some of the nutritional stuff. Jeff owns a large feed company known throughout the United States, Hunter Nutrition. He's an animal nutrition scientist, so he has lots of information to give us. We are going to be having a live interview with a soil biologist. I got in contact with a soil biologist out of Flagstaff, Arizona today. His name's Eli, and Eli is going to be coming on to talk with us. We have a professional videographer, photographer that does videos for a living, used to shoot commercials. He is going to come on at some point and talk to all of us about putting together videos, putting together photos, if you're selling livestock or if you're setting stuff up for your website, stuff like that. So that's going to be really awesome. His name is Jason. We have a goat guy. Yay. We found a commercial goat breeder nearby. I'm in the works with him. We're going to be talking to him soon as well. And then here slowly but surely, before too long, we're going to be doing a sit down with Brian. Brian is the creator of Herd Help, and we've talked about that briefly before. Herd Help is the new app that's going to be coming out for you to manage your herd and your flocks, and all kinds of other stuff as well. So really awesome. I've been kind of on the ground floor with that. I've done some testing of that app with Brian, and I can tell you we're pretty excited about it. It's definitely going to be hauling our records out to the pasture with us, or out to out to the barn with us every time we go. Simply upload the stuff on your computer and go from there. So yeah, so lots and lots of questions. I'm kind of glad to be doing the live stream again this week, just to kind of catch up on some of the questions that we've been getting. Again, it's the same stuff that we see over and over and over. Usually with the flocks, we're talking about coccidia, we're talking about worming. It seems like those are the things that people really, really struggle with. I have been getting a lot of people have been sending me articles lately. They're like, hey, I'm on a website and I see this posted. What do you think of this? And that's really difficult to say. If you're in doubt, and nobody's posting like a backup link to something, then you probably want to check that out. So, if, for instance, you go on somewhere and they're like, oh, this doctor wrote this, and there's no link to it, ask them for a link. Be like, hey, can you give me a link that'll get me to where you found this article? Or it's really easy. You can just simply highlight. You can highlight and post a question or something that someone posts. Just highlight it, post it in Google, and see what pops up. If it legit came from a study or something, it's going to come up on Google. I do that a lot. We ran into an issue today where here's the problem. Right, plain and simple. People have no problems whatsoever posting things online that are just not true. And it may be their thoughts on things, and they don't feel that they have enough legitimacy, so they're going to tell you that a veterinarian told them this. We had an issue today where an individual sent me an article, quote unquote, with no link, and there was a veterinarian, quote unquote, that wrote it. I looked up the individual. The individual is not a veterinarian. As a matter of fact, the individual was basically a sales rep for a company. So, and lo and behold, they were pushing their product. So, you got to be careful. None of this is a quick fix. I like to think of us as kind of a middle of the road kind of mentality on things. I think there's organic stuff that works. I think there's non-organic stuff that works. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding the right thing on your farm that works for you. So, for instance, there's lots of, simple stuff that you can do that will help to keep your animals healthy. We've talked about the free choice sodium bicarb. That's an easy thing that you can do. That's not a prescription. But if you want to do Sweet Licks bloat guard blocks, they have medicated bloat guard blocks. We had an individual, a friend of ours, called me up a couple days ago, and he said, hey, my doe is out in the pasture and she's laying on her side and she can't move. What do you think is going on? And I was like, well, what was she doing in the morning? And he said she was walking around just fine that morning, and now she can't. Now she can't function. So I talked him through it. We figured out that it was bloat, and of course he had nothing on hand to deal with bloat. So I had to give him some TheraBloat. TheraBloat comes in this little bottle. It's about yay big. If you don't have TheraBloat on your farm, I don't care if you raise sheep, if you raise goats, if you raise cattle, anything, any kind of ruminant, anything that can bloat, I want you to go online and I want you to look up TheraBloat. I'll type that down here in the messages right now. And you can buy TheraBloat. I spelled that wrong. BLOAT. Sorry about that. You can pick up TheraBloat. You can get it at, I'm sure Premier carries it. If not, you can get it on Amazon. And so what TheraBloat does is if you get an animal that's down from abomasum bloat, let's say they got into something that's a little too hot for them, like some clover or some alfalfa, something like that, and they're getting real bad bloat and they're down, you can give this to them and it'll usually pop them right up. Obviously, if an animal can't swallow, you're going to want to tube them. And that's another thing that you probably need to always make sure that you have on hand. But again, the TheraBloat, it's relatively inexpensive. I think it's inexpensive. It's about $18 for that little bottle. But one bottle, that'll treat a whole cow. So, about a third of it will treat a sheep or a goat. And no kidding, you give it to them and boom, they're out of it. So that's abomasum bloat. Frothy bloat you'll run into sometimes, and that's basically where they're foaming at the mouth and it's coming out that way. And you can give it to them for as little as you can give them oil for that, and a lot of times it works. So there's a lot of different places out there that carry multiple places. Any feed store that's worth their weight that has medications more than likely has it. So just check it out. If you don't have it, it's a lifesaver. It's one of those things it's going to sit on your shelf forever, and you're just going to be like, oh my Lord, I'm never going to use this thing. And then one day, lo and behold, something will happen and you'll need it. So just definitely something that you'll want to check out. So again, we've been doing the interviews. If you haven't been checking out the interviews, please do. I know a lot of you are going to, or at least you're attempting getting into sales. You want to think about selling off the farm. We did a recent interview with Chris Kreider and his wife, Erin. They did a great job, and they really get into, if you get into that video and you watch it, they're talking to you at the end about how they're doing this. They're going to farmers markets. They're selling things. Things are working out really good for them, more so than they thought. They're from a small rural community, and I think they're selling like two animals every weekend minimum, at really, really good prices. I think they said in the video they're moving things for like, moving animals for almost $9 a pound $9 a pound for ground lamb. So that's really good. As we get further into this and we start talking about goats, we're going to see what the goat prices are as well. Here in my area of Indiana, our goat tends to historically be a little bit higher in price than our lamb does. So we'll see kind of how that goes. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure that you just ask them on here. That's what we're on here for. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can do a search for our live streams and for our interviews, and you can watch them. We're trying to go down and break them down into smaller bite-sized chunks, and that's kind of coming down the pike now too. I know some people don't want to watch the entire 1 hour video, and that's understandable. So we're trying to break it down into more reasonable bite-sized chunks. So again, the worming, the coccidia, these are all things that you guys have to keep up on. We're getting into that time of year where we're going to be breeding, and we definitely need to think about keeping up with the health and welfare of our animals, and making sure that they're as healthy as we can get them, especially for breeding. We want them to be in as optimal of health as we can. So, we get asked a lot. People say, well, if I don't want to give grain, if I don't want to give anything, in a feed form other than out on pasture, how am I supposed to treat them for coccidia? How am I supposed to treat them, with coccidia prevention to help make that happen? And basically, you can buy free choice minerals that are out there on the market that you can feed to them that has coccidia medication in it. it has Bovatech or Decox or whatever mixed right into the free choice mineral. And so that's an easy way to do that. Even if you have an animal that is on pasture, you still need to make sure that you are giving them some kind of free choice mineral specific for their breed primarily. And as we've talked about before, if you're dealing with males, you need to make sure that, you're not giving them a load of phosphorus, because that phosphorus is going to more than likely lead to urinary calculi. Of all the calls that we get in a week, and we get a lot, and all the emails that we get in a week, we almost certainly get a urinary calculi phone call or text message during the week. We almost certainly get something about worming, about how somebody bought an animal from a farm and they told them everything was going to be fine and they didn't have to worm them because they were immune to worms or something like that. And then they come back and they take them to their farm and they just fall apart on them. Coccidia is another one. A lot of this stuff, right or wrong, people aren't very proactive on, and they want to wait until they have a problem. And then once they have a problem, they're trying to play catch up. So that can be, that can be problematic. So, a little bit of preparation work can go a really long way. A question got asked on the Tack box today. And again, if you're not on the Tack box, you should be. That is our open forum where people can come on and ask questions. For those of you that are on here, I know a lot of you are on here, frequent the Tack box, and I really appreciate that. A lot of times I think people fall into this rut on the Tack box where they're like, I'm going to ask a question and Tim's going to answer it. And, feel free to jump in there and answer questions as well. If you think, if you have input. The other thing that I get a lot of is I get individuals that email me personally and they're like, hey, I don't feel comfortable asking this question because they're used to the way it goes on normal forums. And we've all been there, right? I literally stopped going on online forums because someone would ask a question, I would give an answer, and I would just get destroyed by people that were just like, they didn't like what I had to say, or it went against something that they were trying to do or something that they were trying to sell, and they didn't like that. We just don't deal with that on our online forum. We're not going to get rid of you if we don't agree with what you say. That's not where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is like, don't be afraid to ask a question. If you ask a question and someone gives you like a non-answer, they give you like some kind of goofball making fun of you answer, or they start harassing you or something, we just eject them immediately. So by all means, there is no dumb questions. Chances are, if you're thinking of it, other people are too. That's the problem with this industry. If I had to beat up any livestock industry, I would say, hey, look, people are not willing to help each other. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, you either find one extreme or the other. Either individuals are willing to help you, or they're not. I guess the dangerous part is sometimes people will tell you things like it's gospel and they literally have no idea what they're talking about. And that's scary too. So you have to be cautious. And we've talked about this a lot in the past, right? Like even with me, I do my best to give you the best information I can give you and reliable information. And any of you that follow me online know that 99% of the time, if I give you some kind of a statement, I follow it up with a link to a veterinary website or a peer-reviewed study or something. That way you're not just like taking Tim's word for it. And one size doesn't fit all. So I may give you ideas, and while that's awesome, it may not work for you, or you may have a better idea. We evolve all the time here. We do new things all the time. We try new things all the time. I don't farm the same way I did a few years ago. Every year I'm changing things up and trying to do the best I can. So, you're just along for the ride with me. Think of this more as us having a conversation with each other instead of me like talking at you and telling you how to think or what to think. It's a very unique, and that's part of the fun, right? It's a unique experience that should be enjoyable for you and your family. And we're just going through it together. So we got a question here. Let's see what we got. So, hello, Tim. I feed my lamb sweet feed 12% every morning. I have 10 lambs, and one specific lamb, every time he eats, gets foam in the mouth and starts choking, coughing up more foam. Do you know why? Yep. So chances are the animal couple things that I want you to consider with that animal. I want you to take a look at its body condition and see if it's over condition, see if it's over fat. We get that a lot sometimes if our lambs get a little on the chunky monkey side, and they just don't have a lot of room down there. The other thing is some of these animals like to inhale their food. It's just a matter of how fast they're eating it. It's getting down into that rumen and it's spilling over. A lot of times we can call it cud spilling sometimes as well. If they're eating greens, and you'll see them barfing that up and they get green in and around the mouth. The other thing that you want to watch for on these over conditioned animals is rectal prolapse and cough. So classic signs that we see with overfed animals, and some breeds are worse at this than others. Overfed animals or animals that are overweight, classic signs that we see from them is foaming at the mouth after eating, cud spilling, which is green crap coming up and out of their mouth, cough after eating, and rectal prolapse associated with cough. And so what that means is every time they cough, you're actually going to see the inside of the rectum actually coming out of them like a slinky, and then it'll either go back in or you're going to have to put it back in. Very, very common. Some breeds are worse at this than others. So I will tell you that some of the smaller, stockier breeds that grow really, really fast will need to be fed a little bit differently than some of the taller, lankier ones. So for instance, I will tell you, when we very first got into Southdown sheep, I brought home a dozen Southdown ewe lambs from Aaron Jennings. And I started pouring the grain to them like I do with my Dorsets. And about a week later, they were all coughing. Half of them were foaming at the mouth, and half of them had rectal prolapse every time that they coughed. So I called Aaron, and I was like, what's going on? He said, well, they probably all look like beach balls, don't they? And I was like, yeah. And he said, you're overfeeding them. You need to slow down. And as soon as I slowed that down, it rectified itself. Now, I will tell you, we have one culprit on the farm that I can think of that's a ram, and he just eats like a hog. Every time he eats, he just inhales his food, and he'll get a little bit of that spilling after he eats as well. And it's very annoying. And other than keeping him secluded and forcing him to slow down, it usually doesn't work. He just will eat as fast as he can and goes from there. But so that's kind of a non-answer, but the first thing I want you to do is just check general body condition, see where they're at, and see if they are, see if they're getting a little bit overweight. That may be the culprit. Again, how do we judge if an animal is overweight? Well, we can't judge just by looking at them. We need to feel over the ribs, and we need to feel how much body fat is over the rib. Now, those animals can get hay belly. You can look at an animal, you can look at a goat, you can look at a sheep, and you can notice that they've got this huge belly, right? They got this huge gut. And the reality is even though they've got this huge gut, they're not fat at all. It's gas, it's bloating. So what you want to do is you want to move up that animal's side. You want to feel those ribs. And when you feel those ribs, again, I know we've been over this before, but if those ribs feel like the back of your fingers, it means that they're probably under conditioned. If it feels like the back of your arm to where it's completely smooth, it means that they're over conditioned. And if it feels like the back of your hand, they're probably just right. So you can feel just a little bit of bone structure in there, but you're feeling a little bit of fat as well. So that's kind of the 1 to 5 would be like 1 is all bones, 5 is all fat. 3 is kind of what we're looking for, which is going to be somewhere in the middle. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're judging actual body fat and actual cover on an animal. Just don't look at their big bloated belly and say, oh, well, they must be well nourished because they've got that big belly. No, that's not the case at all. So moving on from there, let's see what we've got. So another question that we have here. Hi, Tim. What do you do with your manure? Is it safe to put it back in the grazing area? So this is a great question. We do save all of our manure from our dry lot area. We use it to fertilize our fields. We do this in a process that takes a considerable amount of time. Normally what we'll do, and I believe we have a video on this, you'll have to check it out, but essentially what we do is we bring our manure out with a lot of the dry material, and this dry material is straw, bedding, things like that, and we mix it up together, we put it in a big pile, and we let it sit and we let it settle. What we normally find is that manure will almost half itself in size over about 6 months to a year, depending on on really what's in there. That straw in there that we use for bedding, or corn stalks that we use for bedding, has a lot of carbon in it, and it tends to break down really nicely. So we take a little bit of our finished compost, we mix it in with our new compost, we flip it around, and we let it cook essentially, and it cooks itself down. And then over time, we bring new manure in. The older manure makes it down the line. If you were to look out in my field, what you would see is I have 3 piles. I have the new pile, the pile that's been cooking for about a year, and then I have a pile that's about 2 years old. The 2-year-old pile looks like nothing but black dirt. So there are some considerations to remember when you're spreading manure out on pasture, and that would be, parasite, bugs, nasty things. It's not completely broken down. How hot is the manure? What livestock are you raising? Some manure you can spread right on your field and it works really, really well. Other manure, it's way too hot, like chicken manure comes to mind, and you can't spread it. It needs to settle down and cook out for a while because it has too high of nitrogen. You don't want to go throwing that right on your field. But let's assume you're talking about just sheep and goat manure. You can really take that out of your bedding areas and out of your barns, as long as it's mixed in with some straw, some hay, which it more than likely will be. You can put that on the pile, let it sit for as short of amount of time as about 2 to 3 months. You can put it in your manure spreader and you can take it out and you can spread it. So there's a couple ways that we like to do this. The first way we like to do this is during the heat of the summer when the grass cover is low. We will take it out there and we will spread it. The UV rays that hit it from the sun help to really destroy anything that's in it. And then the rain will help beat it in. The other nice time that we would do it would be in the fall, and we let it go over winter. We don't spread it on the fields that our animals are actively on, because it just doesn't quite break down fast enough. Like on our rotational grazing, we don't spread it where the animals are or where we reasonably expect they're going to be for the next few months, because it does need some time to break down. You can spread, parasites, disease, things like that without giving it adequate time to get weathered. So a couple things you can do: you can keep it all year, and you can spread it all in the fall, let it winter over, and then it's all baked in. Or you can spread it more on your hay fields when they're cut all the way down, maybe in between cuttings, and make sure that's going to get a lot of time where it's going to get direct UV rays and weather on it, and that'll help break things down as well. But again, be cautious, and do some legwork and some research depending on the type of animals that you're raising, because you don't want to bake your field because the nitrogen content is too high. So let's see what else we have here. I have a pasture question that I mentioned on the Tack box, but I can wait until the soil biologist comes on soon. Catherine, I vaguely remember your question, so make sure you check that out, or just type it in now, and we can deal with it. I don't mind. I don't recall exactly what the question was, so I think it had to do with speed of rotational grazing. So go ahead and type that in for me. Okay. Actually, I skipped a few. I'm going back here. So for a small scale flock, do you suggest a hammock style chair for things like drench administration, or just holding the animal on their back against your knees, which is less prone to prolapse problems? So that's a good question. So there's a video that we've been meaning to make, and it will be coming out soon. We are just so busy. And the video that we're going to be making is basically stuff that we've bought that we don't necessarily use, or things that we got that we were like, oh, I'm definitely going to use this. And then we get it and we're like, we don't use it. The sheep lounge chair, for those of you that don't know what that is, you can see it on Premiere, and it's a nifty little item. I like the idea of it. It's just not, I just found, for whatever reason, it just wasn't something that I use. A couple things that I've noticed: for those of you that raise sheep, you probably know this, you can rock them back on their butt really, really easily. You do need to be careful of where you're standing because you can catch a hoof in the face. But goats, flipping them on their butt and bouncing back on their butt is not, it just usually doesn't work very well. So if I trim a sheep's hoof, generally I'll flip them on their butt and I'll just trim their feet that way. If I trim a goat's hooves, I'll normally leave them standing in their standing position, and I'll break them at the foot. I'll bend that foot backwards, and I'll trim the bottom of the foot that way. I just find that that's a little bit more user friendly. Now, I will tell you guys, we do have a tilt table here on the farm. We don't show you guys the tilt table very much, To be honest with you, we don't really use it very much, but we do have one. Brian, my friend Brian, and I had a conversation about this the other night about some equipment that we have. Some of the equipment that we have, we just don't really cover in our videos, because the reality of it is and maybe I'm wrong here, I don't know. I just don't see the value in me making a video to show you how to use $1,000 piece of equipment, because that's just not, for a lot of you that are just getting started, you're not going to go out and drop $1,000 on a tilt table for 5 animals or even 10 animals. And really, I don't think you should. I don't think it's warranted. So I would say, for sheep, I like to just sit on a bucket and rock them back up against me and work on them that way. For goats, I just like to work on them while they're standing up. You can halter them to a fence, or you can have a helper hold them. Oral drenches I find work best to just give while they're in the normal standing position. They seem to take that better and do a little bit better with that. And so I guess that's my answer. The sheep hammock, it works okay. Depending on the size of your sheep, I don't feel that it works well for goats. The other thing I don't like about the sheep hammock, and we already kind of talked about this, was that the way they're rocked back in it, instinctively, the best way for you to work on them is standing right in front of them, facing towards them and holding that hoof in your hand and looking at it. And a lot of times they'll just kick that foot and pop you. And I've seen people just laid wide open by sheep and goat hooves. Before I was with an individual, they were trimming a sheep hoof, had a nice sharp edge on it. They were right in front of them. It took the back leg, came up and kicked him right in the face, and it cut him, just laid him wide open. So I'm not a fan of standing in front of them, and definitely something that you want to consider with your kids as well. So good question. Thank you for asking that. All right. Is it better to use feed or injection? Is it something you would do regularly for coccidia? So coccidia treatments are generally, so coccidia preventatives are generally given in feed. So coccidia preventatives that are usually given across the board that are going to stop coccidia from growing are going to be Decox and Bovatec. Those are probably the 2 main ones that you're going to see in the feed that you are giving. You'll probably see a lot of Decox. We sell both Decox and Bovatec. Here we have Free Choice Mineral. If you go to Foundation Feed, you'll see we have Free Choice Mineral with Decox. We have Free Choice Mineral with Bovatec. We have just Bovatec, just Decox. A little bit of that goes a really long way, which I'm really proud of the fact that we've been able to get that for our customers. Literally a 10-pound bag of Decox will treat 1 ton of feed. A 10-pound bag of Bovatec that we have will treat a ton of feed. So for those individuals that have a small farm, like, you can buy enough to treat a ton of feed for less than $35. But that's generally what you're going to see in most of the medications that are out there is Decox or Bovatec. There are a few other ones, and again, they're given orally. They're usually just given right in the feed. Now, that is preventative. That is medications that we're going to give primarily to prevent these animals from getting coccidia or coccidiosis. So you're going to have coccidia on your farm. It's going to be there. The idea is just to keep it in low enough numbers that it doesn't progress to where it causes coccidiosis, which is the illness associated with an overabundance of the coccidia. Now, for coccidiosis, there are various treatments. There's sulfa drugs, which is usually given orally. Then there's Corid. Corid was the go-to for years and years and years. And it's just kind of a dirty drug in the fact that animals can get very, very sick from Corid. It does work, but you have to really watch them. It tends to knock them back. It tends to make them feel not so good. And also the way that Corid works is it messes with the thiamine in the digestive tract. That is actually the way that it works to hurt the coccidia. And so your animal is not going to get thiamine as well. So if you're going to give Corid, you almost always have to give it in conjunction with an injection of some sort of thiamine. So that's kind of the issue with Corid. So we move on to like, okay, what's the latest and greatest? Well, the latest and greatest when it comes to treating coccidia is the toltralazole. And toltralazole has been around for quite a while in other countries. We just didn't normally have it here in the U.S. It's sold overseas. I know in Australia, Canada, I believe they use it under the trade name of Baycox. There are a few places that you can get it here in the United States, and it is expensive. So we just recently got our own toltralazole that we make, or I shouldn't say we make, that we sell on Foundation Feed that you can buy. And believe it or not, it's one of the cheapest that you can buy in the United States. I priced it carefully to see if it was effective, if it wasn't, as far as cost is concerned. If you go to, there's a couple different ways to make it to Foundation Feed. You can go to linessafarms.com and you can scroll down and go to our sales area and you can click on sales. And that will actually reconnect you to Foundation Feed. Just for sake of the video, I'm going to go that way. Once you get to Foundation Feed's website, if you go up to the shop now and just click on shop now, we have it broken down in categories. And over here on the left-hand side, you'll see where it says worming in coccidia. Just click on the worming in coccidia, and then all of our stuff that we have that we sell for worming and coccidia is there. So our Blackout 5 is our 5% toltralazole. It's 400 milliliters, and it's $129. Like I said, not cheap. This stuff is extremely effective to treat coccidia. A lot of people are using it. You can feel free to shop around. It is, you're going to find it's more expensive elsewhere. Again, the decox, this is what's added to feed, 10 pounds of decox. It'll treat a ton for $34.99. And then the Bovatech, again, 10 pounds treats a ton, $24.99. So I'm not going to go too much on a sales rant with you guys here tonight, but just so you know where to go and how to find it, it is there. So great question. Thank you very much for asking that. So moving on, let's see what we've got. John Doe. Is that your real name, John? Let's see what John has to say. How do I get my rescued 4-month post-kidding, when I got her, now 7 months post-kidding, doe goat to put weight on? We're giving her corn, alfalfa, oats, grass foraging, etc., and her coat. So if you're trying to get your animal to grow, a lot of times we want to look at, are there any subclinical things that are going on? So a lot of times if we look at an animal and we see that that animal is just not putting on weight, just not thriving very well, a lot of times what we're dealing with is maybe they've got a borderline or a subclinical level of parasites in them, or subclinical level of coccidia in them that's actually hurting them and not allowing them to grow. So essentially what's happening is, because they've got maybe inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract, when they eat, that they're not able to absorb all of that nutrition properly because they've got some chronic inflammation that's going on in the gastrointestinal tract. So when you think of like the small intestine, your small intestines have a bunch of like hair-like things in there. We call them cilia, and that is the main area of the body that's going to absorb things like vitamins, nutrients, amino acids, trace minerals, and all that good stuff. Once we get down into the large intestine, we're basically absorbing a lot more just fluid. So we get coccidia that really get into that small intestine area. We can get some inflammation in that small intestine, partially in that small intestine area from worms. More, I'm thinking coccidia, and you can have this failure to thrive. Sometimes these things just build on one another, where it's not one thing, it's a lot of things. So when we have an animal that's not doing well and not putting on weight very well, the first thing I tell people is, I want you to make sure that you clean them up for worms. I want you to make sure that you clean them up for coccidia. And then I want you to make sure that they're getting all of the basic nutrients that they need. Now, there's a couple different ways you can go about this with your goats. We have had really good luck using Multimin. Multimin is an injection that you can get from your veterinarian. It includes copper, manganese, zinc, and selenium. and you can give that to your animal, and it will give them everything that they need. It is a subcutaneous injection. For your adults, you're looking at giving 1 milliliter subcutaneously over the ribs, and it's going to give them everything that they need. Now, anytime you're giving selenium, we want you giving vitamin E as well. Think of your selenium and your vitamin E as kind of being married together. And when you get one, you need the other. They help one another kind of in a synergistic kind of a way, so they're properly absorbed. So if you're going to go through the trouble of giving an animal something that contains selenium, we want you to give that vitamin E with it as well. And you can give that orally, you can give it injectable. But I want you to work with your veterinarian on that one, because that one, no kidding, is something that you could goof up and you could hurt your animal. You have to be cautious if you're giving it in conjunction with other things. For example, a lot of people give what's called BOSI. BOSI is the selenium vitamin E. If you were to give BOSI and then give, the multi-min, you could have an overdose of various things. If you're feeding lots of copper and then you give them injectable copper, you're running some issues there as well. So if you're going to go the route of the multi-min, which I think is a good route to go, but I think you need to work with your veterinarian on that, and your vet's going to have to write you a script for that anyways. So just something for you to consider. We've heard horror stories about multi-min. I had an individual that contacted me, and he's like, I talked to a guy, and the guy said that he gave his animal injectable copper and it didn't even make it across the barn floor and it died on him. I don't want to call that friend a liar. Maybe he heard that story from someone else and maybe he's just repeating it. Copper doesn't work that way. It's not going to kill your animal and cause them to drop dead. Excessive copper can kill your animal, but it's a longer, slower process than that. Usually I kind of raise an eyebrow when someone says, I gave an animal this medicine and it walked across the floor and died. I'm like, okay. Just again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. But when people tell you things, just be cautious. I saw on a forum the other day, somebody said, my goats consistently kid 3 times a year. I'm like, no, they don't. Because that's not possible. So just silly stuff. You just got to be cautious. So, anyhow, so make sure they've got the nutrients that they need. Make sure you clean them up for parasites. Make sure you clean them up for coccidia, and then offer them as good a protein as you can give them, up to about 20%. If you're giving, you don't want to feed over 20% protein combined in the feed. They can't process it properly, and you'll actually make an animal more sick than you will help them. So if you aim for a middle of the road protein, if I'm trying to grow an animal and grow them out, I think 16% protein is a great place. 12% or above, I think, is a great place, not to exceed 20. 20% is a bit excessive for most people. Unless you're raising like club lambs, club goats, I don't think you necessarily need to spend your money on 20%. I think it's a little dangerous. It's a little bit hard to handle. It can be hard on the animal. So, if you really want them to grow hard, maybe concentrate more on a 16 to 17%. If you're just wanting to grow in general, I think anything over 12% is good. So keep that in mind. All right. So, hello. Typically, how long after a pregnant doe becomes hollow at her lower back and tendon is she going to go into labor? So, great question. So, for those of you that don't know, there are a couple of things that you can tell with a goat that are a little bit easier to tell than with a sheep as far as pregnancy progresses. So sheep and goats will both tend to drop. That baby will drop into position as they're getting closer to having that baby, as they're getting closer to a delivery. I'll look at them usually 36, 48 hours before they're going to have a baby, and I'll notice they kind of hollow out along their back. You'll kind of be able to see the spine, and then you see kind of a hollow, the belly starts. That can be a little misleading. Some people say, oh, well, when you see that happen, they're going to have babies within 12 to 24 hours. As those moms age and their bodies get a little bit more used to having babies, they tend to drop a little earlier. So with sheep, boy, good luck telling when they're going to go into labor. When they start pawing at the ground, laying down and flipping back and forth, then I know they're going into labor really soon. But boy, sheep are a lot tougher. Now, goats, on the other hand, have a couple tendons that run along the side of their dock. So if you find the tail on the goat and you feel on both sides of that bone going back to the tail, and you feel on both sides, what you're going to feel is a couple of tendons, and those tendons basically feel like pencils in there. Now, it's easier to feel this on a doe that is pregnant but nowhere near having her baby yet. If you feel those, you'll feel them, and they're really profound and really easy to feel. So if you haven't done this before and you want to kind of get your feet wet and you're like, what the heck is Tim talking about? Go out and find yourself a doe and feel for those tendons, and you're going to feel them right now. They're going to be very, very profound. As that doe progresses through labor, or pardon me, as that doe progresses through her pregnancy and she's getting closer to labor, those tendons naturally start to soften. And that softening allows the pelvis to open, so that baby can be delivered easier, usually. So if you feel, what you're going to notice is as she gets closer and closer, those tendons are going to get softer and softer and softer. When you get to the point that you can no longer feel them at all, what you're probably looking at is 24 to 36 hours away from her delivering her kids. Now, I will tell you this. Sometimes people will just kind of haphazardly feel, and they're like, yeah, I can't feel them at all. She's going to have a baby in 24 hours. And then I'll come up and I'll feel, and I'm like, no, I can still just barely feel them. Now, my wife is much better at this than I am. Sometimes I'm like, no, I don't feel them. And she's like, yeah, they're there. So no kidding, when you get to the point to where you can't feel them at all, they are not there at all, then you're usually safe to say you're within 24 to 36 hours. Now, here's the problem. Goats go into labor, sheep go into labor early for various reasons. Goats don't advance properly. It's the same problem that we run into with humans, right? As we get closer to delivering, or I should say as females get closer to delivering their babies, they start to dilate, correct? And sometimes things go wrong and you get contractions without dilation, you get labor without dilation. That's where your vet gets in hand. Your vet has certain drugs like epinephrine that they can give them that will cause them to dilate quickly. That's one of kind of the go-to drugs that they'll give is epi. And then there's certain drugs that we can give as well to cause an animal to start to push, like Pitocin. With that being said, you generally can go with those tendons to get a feel for things, but it's not the end all be all. So if you see your animal and you think it's in labor, it's pushing, things are going not so great, and you get a feeling like, hey, this animal is trying to have a baby, but you feel those tendons and you say to yourself, oh no, I don't need to worry about that because I can still feel the tendons. No, don't do that. Don't make that mistake. An animal can go into labor early, and that's something that you want to contact your vet with immediately. I got to tell you, this is a great place to talk about this. If you don't have a relationship with a veterinarian, you need to get one. Even if you don't plan on using the vet, I want you to find your closest veterinarian that will treat small ruminants, and I want you to just reach out to them and talk to them and just say, hey, look, I don't plan on ever having to use you. However, if I do, I just need to know what is the protocol for me getting in touch with you. Because I will tell you, about once a year, twice a year, I have to call the vet. It's just something that, for whatever reason, I can't do it. Or I can't do it alone. Maybe it's a surgical procedure or something like that. I've got giant hands. Sometimes with like Nigerians and stuff like that, I just can't get in there to reposition a baby or to do what I need to do. Or maybe it's a drug that really needs to be given and I don't have it. So there's a time and a place for the vet. I know that a lot of you don't have anyone close and you think, oh, well, I'll never use them. You know what? It's not going to hurt anything to establish a relationship with a vet. At least that way, if you do need to call them, you're not doing the mad dash to the phone book and trying to get in touch with someone. So just some food for thought, something for you to consider. So hopefully that answers that question. Good question. Thank you. So second question, how to deal with a young buck who likes to headbutt? Yeah. So aggressive rams and aggressive bucks happen. Usually it's your fault, but not always. So it puts people in a bad situation because when animals are young, when our goats are young, when our sheep are young, what I find, at least personally, is the males tend to be a little bit more friendly. And and that's part of the fun, right? That's part of the fun of raising these animals is, having them come up to you. And especially when they're a cute cuddly lamb or a cute little buckling and they want to be around you, you go out there and they just seem to naturally be a little bit more friendly than the ewes and the does, and I don't really know why that is. But what that can lead to very easily is overhandling, over familiarization with you, and then eventually at some point they're going to start challenging you. Now, I'll tell you, we've had some animals that have never become aggressive, and then we have other animals that become aggressive at a very young age. It almost seems like we can pick them out. Now, the problem we run into on our farm is we sell show stock. And if you're going to sell show stock, you have to show animals because people want to see your animals. And so we do show intact males at the fair. And I can tell you that is not for the lighthearted, working with intact males, because you're basically going against the rules. The rules are you don't handle intact males. So going through the process of halter breaking, teaching them to stack and doing all of those things with an intact male gets a little dicey. And I will be the first one to tell you that the more you work with them, the meaner that they get. Now, most times after fair, we'll bring our animals home and we won't touch them again. We're just done with them. We're like, hey, we're not going to handle you anymore. And they tend to kind of snap out of it, but some don't ever snap out of it. If you have an animal that's butting you and ramming you at 4 weeks of age, 4 months of age, they're going to be doing it when they're a year old. They're going to be doing it when they weigh 250 pounds and can, potentially, break your leg or hurt you or hurt someone else. So I tend to treat my males, and again, I get it. I get it. So, just hear me out. I do not like keeping my animals separated any more than you do. I don't like not being familiar and handling my animals any more than you do. It's just one of those things that I have to do for safety reasons, for myself, for my kids, for my visitors, for my structures, those kind of things. So I treat my males, generally speaking, like I would treat an office coworker that I don't necessarily like. I'm a mature adult. I can get along with anyone, but I'm not going to go out of my way to visit with you if I don't like you. So that's kind of the way that I think about my males. They go into a pen, generally speaking, unless they're breeding, and they can live in there with their other male friends and they can commingle and have a good time. And we go in there and we feed them and we talk to them and we tell them hello. We're cordial with them and everything else, but we don't pet them. We don't love on them. We don't tolerate them ramming us or doing anything like that. We're in, we're out, and that's it. That's the safest way to be. Sometimes males will get to be where you'll get some off kilter kind of males to where they're either very nice and they never get aggressive, to where they only get aggressive when females are in estrus, or they just get so mean that you have to get rid of them because they destroy everything. But I think you'll find that if you just try to leave them alone when they're babies, and just don't ever get in the habit of handling them and keep them segregated, generally you won't have any problem with them. And it's unfortunate, and I don't like it any more than you do, but that's the best answer that I can give you. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Thank you for the question. Good question. All right, so Catherine, here we are. So you have 2 ewes that you rotationally graze on our acre. By the time they get around again to the place they've been, the grass is super long and they won't eat it long. Any suggestions? So yeah, get a goat. And you probably don't like that. We love rotational grazing our sheep and goats together because the goats will eat things that the sheep won't. What we noticed, we used to run them separate. And we used to put the goats in one pasture and the sheep in another pasture, and they were never together. And what we noticed is that there was stuff left in both pastures, right? The goats will eat some things, the sheep will eat others. And what we noticed was that the sheep would eat all kinds of certain stuff, but then we'd have all kinds of tall stuff in there as well. And so we started putting them together, and we noticed that the goats and the sheep both ate different enough stuff to where they get a nice even mowing, to where they kind of take things down evenly. We still get a little bit of harder, rougher stuff that gets a little too stemmy that they don't care for, and that stays up. What I would recommend is one of two things. I would recommend get yourself a goat, get yourself, even if it's castrated, just a wether, just something fun to have and just to hang out with. And treat him, give him his copper in a separate way, and then the rest of the time you can just feed him. You can just feed him his normal. You can just feed him his normal sheep food, and he'll be fine. So keep them in that way, and that should help out. If not, you're probably going to have to start mowing behind them after they're done grazing, and just set the mower really high to where you're just clipping the tops off of what they didn't eat, and that'll go a long way. It'll help you out in a couple ways. One, it'll keep you from getting an overload of weeds, and two, it will kind of keep it a little bit more sightly and keep these problems from happening. So that's what I would say. Get yourself a goat, or get yourself the lawnmower out there and just mow it down a little bit. I'm not telling you to mow it as short as you would for your yard, but just to knock the tops off of, even things up, and that will help. So good question. A relatively easy fix for all intents and purposes. So try it out. Let me know how things work. All right. So John, no wonder you're on here under John No, because you're a troll. That's too bad, John. You had great questions. I enjoyed answering them, and that was good because it gave some insight to individuals. But unfortunately, that's too bad that you're trolling the sheep and goat forum. You're just a sad, sad man. Anyways, moving on. So do it myself. What do we got here? Hello. We had issues with the hammock, with their horns getting stuck in the netting. Yeah, so that sheep lounge chair, definitely. Like getting stuck, getting horns stuck, getting kicked in the face. I bought one. I really, really thought I was going to use it. It was one of those things that I was like, this makes sense to me. I am most definitely going to use this. And then it's just like, nah, it just didn't really happen for me. Not to say that it wouldn't happen for some other people. I think maybe if I had hornless, smaller frame sheep, like I think a baby doll Southdown would be perfect for that hammock. But for the rest of us, I just don't know. 300-pound sheep, yeah, most definitely not going to work out. All right. Pennsylvania is getting an infestation of spotted lantern flies. I saw that. They're toxic to sheep and goats. It appears. So are these insects toxic to sheep and goats? It appears they are to dogs. I don't know. I just saw this on the news last night. This was the first I had ever heard about this. But I will do some research on this, and I will post something. So keep an eye out for that on the Tack box. Probably within the next 24 hours, I will go ahead and post that, and we can go from there. All right. Good to know. Do it myself sounds like a hard pass on that particular equipment. Yeah, I don't know how much they're costing now, but yeah, maybe a pass for you. So Premier is hopefully Premier's not trolling. Maybe John Doe's from Premier. Maybe that's why he's trolling us tonight. I don't know. Maybe that's he got angry because we were talking bad about his. There was a couple things from Premier. There was the hammock, the sheep hammock lounge chair thing that I got from Premier, and then there was a heat lamp that I got from Premier. The carbon fiber heat lamps. I don't know if you guys have seen these or not. But holy smokes, those carbon fiber heat lamps, I got one from Premier, and it's like, if you get it close enough to the animals to actually warm them, it's just too low to where the animals are going to be getting to it. And then the problem with it is it's hotter. You could literally like fry an egg on it. That thing is scorching hot to where like if you touch it, it's going to burn you. And that was another one that we're going to cover in the video, to where it's just like, I buy these things. I spend a lot of money on these things, right? They're not cheap. And then I get them and I'm like, oh, so unfortunately people don't sell me free samples. We don't do like, hey, if you send me free stuff, I'll promote your business. I don't do that. So unfortunately Premier's not sending me free stuff. So I had to pay for it, which is too bad. Okay, let's see. Do you recommend solar or marine batteries for wooded and pasture areas? Certain companies are really pushing solar, but in Pennsylvania, I would shy away from the solar energizer. So, great question, and we have a video that's coming up. I'll tell you in a few days. I want to publish it tomorrow, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to. So, what we have done is we have deep cycle batteries. So currently for our pasture, we have deep cycle batteries that are attached to a energizer that charges, or to a charger that charges our fence. That way we can move it around. What I started thinking about, I just don't like the full all-in-one solar deals. I don't like having to rely just on solar because there's so much of the time of the year that it's just not going to work for me here in Northwest Indiana. The other thing is if I'm going to have them in the forest or things like that, I don't want to deal with it. So, what I finally did was I was like, okay, how can I most cost effectively do this? And what I was doing was I was charging a deep cycle battery. I had 2 deep cycle batteries and I was bringing one out there. And then every week I was swapping them out. Well, then what I did was I ended up going online and I found a solar panel setup that I can charge that deep cycle battery with. So really, if you work with me here, what I've got is I've got a fence energizer that runs off the deep cycle battery, but then I also have a solar panel that I literally, this is how much work I put into this. I attached it to a pallet. I leaned it up against the sawhorse and it just sits out there. And it charges that deep cycle battery. I've never yet, all summer, I have not had to move or change out that deep cycle battery. It just charges it. And for a fraction of the cost, the fraction of the cost is like, I paid $100 and something, I think, for this whole solar kit on Amazon. When I put that video out, I'm going to include all the information there for you. Now, there's a couple different chargers you can buy that will do AC or DC. The problem that I have, so the SpeedRite version that I have comes with everything. It comes with an AC hookup. It comes with a battery hookup. Everything's all there. From what I've seen, Premier has a really nice one that I like. And the problem is I think you have to pay extra if you want to buy the AC and the DC. Like, you can get it set up for AC or for DC, but not both. And if you want to buy both, you got to pay extra for that. The thing I also like about the DC charging fence chargers is that they tend to push more joules. Joules, if you think of it, kind of the amount of force that's pushing that power through that line. A lot of the solar chargers out there just simply don't push enough joules. So it's got a lot of volts, quote unquote, but then when you hook it up to your fencing, especially like the netting, it doesn't have enough oomph to push it through there. And so you run into issues. So that can be the problem with them. So we'll talk about that in the video that's coming up. I'm glad you asked that question, Dave. At least I know that Dave will watch that video. So if nobody else does, Dave, make sure that you give me a thumbs up when you look at that. Okay. After deworming, how long do you wait to do a fecal check? I'll wait about a week. If I have an animal, so I did a video recently where I showed you that I had an animal that had a pretty heavy worm load. About a week after I worm them, not sooner than that, about a week after I would worm them, I'll do another fecal and I'll kind of see where we're at. If it seems like they're trending downward pretty heavily, I may do it a week later and then 2 weeks later and then see where we're at before I would redose them. If you dose them, you check them in a week and it's like you didn't even touch them, then you gave them 2 weeks of a dose and you need to retreat them. And that could be for worms or coccidia, whatever. You should notice a difference. But I would say more than 7 days, nah, I wouldn't waste my time. So good question. Thank you. If I put the coccidia prevention in their food daily, does this mean I won't be able to milk for cheese or human consumption? That's a great question. So all of these medications have withdrawal periods. So you are going to have to check and see what the withdrawal period is on that through a simple Google search. You can check that. I don't have all of the withdrawal periods memorized, but yeah, you're correct. A lot of these medications, especially um, some of the preventative medications don't have a withdrawal period, but I can tell you that a lot of the treatments do. And I can't remember what core it is off the top of my head, but it is a considerable amount of time. So definitely a great question. Definitely something for you to check into. Just not something that I have the information right off the top of my head. Oh, the goat management calculator. Yes, Cheryl. Thank you. So Cheryl said something about our goat management calculator, and I forgot that I have a goat management calculator. So let's take a look at that really quick, because some of you are probably wondering, like, what in the heck is this guy talking about? So I'm going to go to Linessa Farms here real quick, and when I go to Linessa Farms, if you go to the download section, if you guys haven't checked out all of our downloads, we have tons and tons of stuff on here. If you go to the meat goat management calculator or the sheep calculator and you click on it, it's just an Excel file that will actually pop up. And basically you just put in dates and it's going to auto populate. So desired kitting date, you can put in a date up here. So let's say I want to have a desired kitting date of January 2nd, 2022, and I hit enter, and it will self-populate all of these other dates over here. So let's say I want to do the 1st of March 2023. Right down here, it'll say I need to flush my does on September 13th. I need to breed the does on September 28th. I need to end flushing on September 14th. And then it tells you everything over here, everything over there that you need to see. And for some reason, I apologize. I was not sharing that screen. So I guess the best way for me to do that would be, let's see if I can figure it out. I'll probably have to figure it out next time so you guys don't have to watch me fumble around here. Let's see if I can figure it up real quick. Oh, there it is. Yay, we found it. So again, if you go to our download section and just click on this, you will be able to see it over here. And essentially, you just scroll through, you put your date up top here in this green box. And it will do all the work for you. So 4/1/2023, I hit enter, and all of these dates pop up over here. And again, just go to the download section of our website and check this out. And it's all right there. So it's super easy for you to see. And it'll show you everything that you need to do before and after. And we have this for sheep and for goats. So by all means, check that out. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I appreciate it. All right. Good deal. Okay, so moving on. Let's see what else we've got here. All right, so we have new sub, good content. Appreciate you not being dogmatic. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Well, you're very welcome. Sometimes we got answers for you and sometimes we don't. If I don't have the answers for you, I can at least find it and I can get you headed in the right direction. So we do our best to help you guys out. It's a learning process for us, just like it is for you. So, hey, Tim, I asked a few weeks ago about a dual purpose breed for grazing. You recommended Dorsets. I've been hearing wool breed meat can have an off flavor for direct marketing. No, everybody has their own, I guess, thoughts on that. We sell lots and lots and lots of wool breeds that people eat. I have a large ethnic community in my area that almost all you ever see at the sale barn is wool. I question the person that's telling you that as to what their motivation is to tell you that. No. We have Arabic, Greek, Hispanic, all kinds of people that purchase livestock from us with wool on them. More of what you're going to run into with wool breeds, or any breed of sheep for that matter, is a lot of the taste and flavor that you're going to get out of them has more to do with age than it does to do with than it has to do with anything else. If an animal is too old, if they're starting to get over a year of age, especially, you start getting up into 2 years, things like that, like, oh yeah, they are going to get a muttony kind of a flavor to them. But no, I have never, ever, ever, as far as the lamb is concerned, wool, we raise wool and hair breeds. I personally can't really tell that much of a difference. Again, I can tell a difference in age. Oh yeah. But as far as just from it being wool or not wool, no, not necessarily. So good question. Take it for what it's worth and see what it is. Now, if you got an individual that's like happens to be selling a hair sheep breed and they're like, oh no, you want to get my breed because my breed tastes better. That may have something to do with it. But it's hard to say. I will tell you that all breeds have a little bit of a different taste to them. I'm not going to lie to you. But again, age is the big culprit there that you'll want to consider. All right. Catherine, husband is not goats. You know what? Here's the thing about spouses. Like, they get over things as long as you don't like go completely nuts on stuff. Sometimes the best thing to do is just bring them home, and let them get over it. I don't know what else to say. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. Thanks, Tim. Will the video go into Energizer? A company I contacted did not like Speedrite. Yeah. Again, tomato. It depends on what companies are selling. Speedrite used to be a lot better than it is now. I will tell you that. Of course, all of them used to be better than they are now. Most of them have been outsourced and are made overseas, which I guess can be a good thing or a bad thing. I can tell you we've had our Speedrite charger on the fence all summer long for about 3 years now, and we haven't had any problems with them. I have heard of people get them and they burn up. It just depends on what you want to do. I know Premier sells stuff that I've heard the same thing with, that it's like people have them and they work really good or they don't. So it's difficult to say anymore, to be honest with you. I think a lot of them are made from the same manufacturer. So, hard to know. All right. Tim, we appreciate your time and advice. Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. I bought a couple of new billies this year, and I feel that they are kind of small. Yeah. And I was wondering what best feed for my billies to help them grow well. Well, again, kind of going back to what we talked about, in that, you need to make sure that they're cleaned up against parasites. You need to make sure that they're cleaned up against coccidia. You need to make sure that you're offering them all the nutrition that you can in the form of nutrients and vitamins, minerals, things like that. And you just go from there. So, that's probably your best course of action in regard to that. 16% up to 17% grain can go a long way. So we will take it from there. Oh goodness. So I have to keep doing this. So John, I got to tell you, if you're going to come on here, you need to put your name. The fact that you came on saying that you're John and you told me that you're 105 years old, and that you're dying from cancer, if that is the case, John, I apologize. If you're 105 and you're still raising goats, more power to you. I hope the rest of you can live to the ripe old age of 105 and raise your goats as well. But John, just the fact that you're on here under a fake handle and you're making blanket statements like you're 105, Good Lord, man. If you're 105 and you're up this late, John, you should probably go to bed. I am a healthcare professional. And I am here to look out for you. It's probably past your bedtime. So, something for you to consider. And that's probably the last conversation we're going to have with each other, buddy. So, just take it at that. You should feel empowered that I gave you this much attention. Okay, moving on. So, hey, Tim, good night. Would you recommend back breeding F3, F4 stock? Their great grandfather, great. That's far enough apart. We don't want you breeding back to daughters, things like that. But yeah, you have a couple of degrees of separation like that. That is fair. I think that's more than fair. I wouldn't lose any sleep over that. All right. So let's see. Hey everyone, Oklahoma Hills Kiko Invitational Auction went good. Awesome. Highest goat was $3,900 and the lowest was $525. Lower than last year, but not too bad. Very awesome, man. Glad to hear that. How often do you give copper sulfate to maintain goats for worms? A lot of our followers are doing once a month. If they're in, so especially some of our followers that are in the South, that just have like unbelievable worm loads that they just can't get a handle on. Once they get those animals worked up to the copper sulfate worming, are running it once a month and they're having fantastic results with that. Here on our farm, really we're doing maybe once every 3 months. We just find that we don't need to do it that often. Now, again, you get into the issue of how resistant are your animals to worms. You can have animals that have no worm resistance whatsoever. No matter what you give them, you're going to have to be worming them over and over and over and over and over. So you're going to have to kind of see what works for you. Again, we're talking about the copper sulfate solution that's diluted in water. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, don't just feed your animals straight copper sulfate. That would not be good. What is the proper market age and weight for goats and for lambs? Tough to say. That's a great question for your local sale barn. So here in Northwest Indiana, getting up into Michigan, getting into Chicago land area, a lot of our buyers for the holiday season are wanting an animal that's about 60 to 70 pounds. Some people want them as heavier, but rarely do I find individuals that want them over 100. So they say for the goat market in my area through my sale barn, they tell me they want them at 60 to 70 pounds. So something for you to check out. But the best thing you can do, contact your local sale barn, contact your local market, and just ask them. Just be like, hey, I'm raising sheep, I'm raising goats, I want to know what I need. And they will let you know. They'll tell you exactly, because they want to sell your animal. They want to get the most money that they can get out of your animal. So that's probably your best route. Okay. Is January, February a good time to breed my ewes? The reason I ask is that way they'd be ready for Easter the following year. You can raise your animals and you can breed these animals any time of the year. That would be a fine time for you to breed them. I think, not knowing where you live, I can tell you during the winter months, the less hours of sunlight is going to be easier to breed them no matter where you're at in the United States. You're going to have an easier time breeding them than as compared to like the heat of the summer. So by all means, kind of going back to what Alex was asking about, like, how often or what's the ideal weight? I just want to make sure that that you're hitting that ideal weight. If you know that ideal weight is going to take that long, then by all means, set yourself up to do that. If not, you're just going to have to play it by ear. So I would say contact your buyers, get to know your buyers, find out what the weight is, and then back up from that. And then whatever date you need to breed them to get those babies at that weight is what you need to do. But yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with breeding in January, February. Hello, Magpie. We just butchered a wool sheep, and I was nervous. He was 14 months old, but he's delicious. No lanolin taint or anything. I'm a chef. Oh, very good. Yeah, I have never, to be honest, I wouldn't say never, but I rarely eat them in that time frame. If they get over 2 years and I'm getting into mutton, then I'm like, oh, I can usually taste it. But under a year, I've had no complaints. But thank you very much for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Gotcha. So we're good to go there. Hit that like button. Yes, please hit the like button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Thank you very much. All right. What factors should you consider to determine you're buying good sheep and goats from someone selling you animals? Ooh, yeah. Boy, auctions, I don't like them. The reason I don't like auctions is because, um, boy, I could go on and on about why I wouldn't buy from uh, auction. Let me rephrase. I don't like buying from sale barns. Auctions are a different thing because a lot of times at the auctions they'll have them penned up beforehand. If they have them penned up beforehand, then you can walk to the auction floor. You can talk to the seller. You can ask them questions about the animal. You can ask them questions about their lineage. A lot of these sellers are very professional. They have lots of good information for you. They can answer questions for you. You just got to watch out for those basic things. So we talked about that. And again, yeah, it's that's a whole other video. We do have videos out there for you that talk about buying rams, buying ewes, buying does, things like that, the basic things that you need to look for. So please check those out. We just recently, I want to say like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, put out one on buying them. But again, the basic stuff first, you need to check on them to see if they're anemic. You need to check their feet. You need to check their teat structure. You need to check their bite. We just had a friend of ours that just traveled like 2 states away. He bought a goat. He brought it home. He got it home. He checked the bag and the animal had hard bag. Like one whole side of the animal's bag was shot. And now it's like, I paid the guy the money and I'm 2 states away and I just got ripped off and I didn't even know it. So you have to be cautious. As far as a sale barn is concerned, like just going in there blind, not having any history on the animal other than the way that they look and their weight, and you can't even lay hands on it before you purchase it. Nah, there's no way. I can tell you most of us take our cull animals to the sale barn. That is to say, the ones that don't make the cut and that we can't sell, then they're going to the sale barn. So that's just the way I tend to look at the sale barn. Wade, you're very welcome. Dave, yes, time for another video. Kindig, yeah, we have new puppies here on the farm. We have Great Pyrenees. We had 9 of them that were born the other day. We're going to get somebody on the interviews really soon to talk about that, and we're going to go from there. So, but yeah, we got 9 babies. So if you live in our area and you are looking for Great Pyrenees puppies, by all means, please let me know. So I'm out of questions, and that is a good thing. I think we had a really good live stream. I'm glad that we had the chance to do this. We're going to do this every couple of weeks. Please check out the interviews that we're doing. We got great information that's going to be coming to you. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can go to our other live streams. If you do a search for our YouTube videos and look for our live streams, you can see some of these interviews that you may have missed. I know Aaron Jennings put out a really, really good one. Kindig by John Doe. Yeah, everybody. John got his 30 seconds of fame. That was fantastic. So anyways, you guys all have a great night. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you and you spending time with us, visiting with us, participating on the Tack Box again. Make sure you check out the Tack Box if you haven't done so already. I am Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today, and I look forward to talking to all of you again real soon. Thanks a bunch.